Hi, my name is Angel. Welcome back to my channel, and welcome to the big reveal of my top 10 books for 2023. I am like unreasonably excited for this video. I can't even explain why. I'm just so excited to talk about all of these books and let you guys know my favorite books of the year. So obviously we're going to start from number 10 and work our way down to number 1, which is going to be my top book of the year. So let's just go ahead and get right into it. Coming in at number 10 is The Pisces by Melissa Broder. This one is about a woman, a middle-aged woman who is going through a interesting period in her life and trying to figure out what she really wants, and she finds love with a merman, essentially. So you are just following her journey as she tries to figure out her life and then also navigate her very sexual relationship that she has with this merman creature. I thought it was absolutely fascinating, very, very descriptive of a lot of things, so be warned before going in. The ending I absolutely loved as well. It went a totally different direction than what I was expecting. So this book, I remember finishing it, really, really enjoying it. I gave it 5 stars, and then for days and weeks after, I could not stop thinking about this book, and that is why it ended up in this list. It actually ended up in my all-time favorites as well, because it's just a book that I couldn't get out of my mind and I really, really enjoyed. And I feel like when a book doesn't leave your mind even after weeks of putting it down, then that means it's a favorite. Coming in at number 9 is a more recent read. This is Requiem for a Dream by Hubert Selby Jr. This one is one that I put on my 23 and 2023 list and then didn't get to reading it until this past week because I wanted to finish it before the end of the year. As you can see, I annotated a lot of things. I had 4 books that I wanted to finish before the end of the year, so I was doing a vlog where I read all those, and then I just got to this point where I was like, I don't want to finish the one I'm currently reading and I don't want to start the next one. So in that video, it's not going to come out now, but I did do a very in-depth review of this book because I really, really enjoyed it. So I'm a little bit sad that you guys won't get to see that footage about my really raw thoughts about this. This is definitely just like the movie for me, where it's like I've read it once but I don't think I want to read it again because it's absolutely depressing and heartbreaking and made me want to cry while I was reading it and made me want to cry after finishing it. If you don't know, Requiem for a Dream is about these people that spiral into drug addiction. We are following different characters that all have a dream, and unfortunately, when trying to reach this dream, they fall into the clutches of drug addiction and it just goes downhill for them, and it's very, very sad and very, very upsetting. The story in here, particularly following Sarah, who is the mother of this story, she gets addicted to drugs because she wants to go on TV and she wants to lose weight to do that. Just kind of an innocent thing. So her doctor prescribes her some weight loss pills, which then form into an addiction, and it's absolutely heartbreaking. Towards the later half, a lot of my annotations are things that have to do with Sarah because it's just extremely descriptive and graphic the way that she is treated after falling into this addiction. So there is a lot to be said about society and the way that people view addicts, and that just really adds to the true horror of it all. And it's just really, there's no other word for it than absolutely depressing, but I really loved it. Moving on to number 8, we have Maggie's Grave by David Sodergren. I say this every time I mention this author in any of my videos, but if you have not ever read a book by David Sodergren, you need to do it right now. Maggie's Grave is about this town, this very small community that has this legend about Maggie, who was a witch that was burned back in the day. Now we have a group of rowdy teenagers that accidentally summons her and awakens her, and she ravages the town and destroys things, and it gets crazy and fun and descriptive. David Sodergren is a fantastic horror author. He makes horror that is silly and fun. He also has a lot of gore and a lot of very, very descriptive gore in his books. which I really, really love. There was one particular scene in Maggie's Grave, which I always talk about, but there's a man using the toilet, innocently sitting on the toilet, and Maggie, the witch, she says, I have to get in this building somehow, so how am I going to do that? I'm going to crawl through the pipe system. And where the pipes lead? The toilet. So where does Maggie come out? The toilet. And who's on the toilet? A man. And I'm going to leave it at that. Up next, coming in at number 7 is Boys in the Valley by Philip Fracassi. This is probably one of my all-time favorite horror books, and I would definitely recommend this book to anybody who is a fan of horror, especially if you're a fan of, I feel like, more classic horror, like Stephen King type of vibe. I feel like you would really, really enjoy this. This book primarily follows a boy at an orphanage. The first chapter, we are introduced to the way that he became an orphan and the way that he lost his parents, and it's absolutely brutal and graphic and extremely descriptive. And then we get into his life in the orphanage when one night this group of men shows up and they have this man with them who is clearly having a rough time, and he's got these like symbols carved all over his body, and he unknowingly brings an evil presence into the orphanage that starts to affect the children and the priests there, and things go absolutely insane from there on. This book is extremely action-packed. Like, you are not going to be bored while reading this. This is definitely one that I would recommend starting when you know you've got time to finish it, because once you start reading it, you're not gonna want to stop. The action is there, the gore and the violence are there as well, but then it's also like a little bit heartfelt because you get connected to the characters, you get connected to this boy and all the kids at the orphanage, and you want the best outcome for them, but you don't know if that outcome is ever gonna come. This book was also creepy at points, like it had me looking over my shoulder while I was reading it in the dark. And yeah, I just thoroughly enjoyed it. Once again, don't start this book unless you are prepared to finish it right then and there. Next up, in number 6, we have Jackal by Aaron E. Adams. This is a horror book that kind of starts off as a traditional mystery or thriller book. This is about this woman who is from this small town where black girls go missing regularly. Like pretty much every summer, a little black girl goes missing from this place, and there have been countless girls that have gone missing, and it's just kind of an accepted thing in the town. So the woman that we're following has understandably moved away from this small town, but now she is traveling back there to attend a wedding and to see her niece, who, of course, goes missing, being a young black girl in this town. And so now they are on the hunt to find her and to figure out what is really going on in the woods around this town and why so many young girls have gone missing. Obviously, there is a lot of commentary on this with young black girls going missing and how prevalent that is and how it seems to happen so often. But then also when you compare that to 10 missing black girls compared to 1 missing white girl, and which one gets the most attention, I'll let you guys figure that one out. And then it comes in with the horror element that is a little bit of a fantasy horror. It definitely steps out of reality for a little bit, but I absolutely love it so much. Some of my favorite types of horror come into this book at the end, and I can't recommend it enough. Okay, number 5 now. We are in the top 5 books. Another David Sodergren book. This is The Horror by David Sodergren. The only 2 books that I've ever read from David Sodergren, the only 2 books that I read from him this year, and they both ended up in my top 10. So if that's not a clue of how much I enjoy this author, I don't know what to tell you. So The Horror once again takes place in a very, very small town. This is a fishing village in Scotland, I believe. And these big millionaires, billionaires want to come in and destroy the entire village to build a golf course, as rich people do. So the character that we are following primarily is an elderly woman who is going to fight them for her home. She doesn't want to leave her home. She doesn't want to leave this village, and she's going to do everything she possibly can to fight to stay there. She is such a strong and fun character, and especially being just an older woman, I absolutely love her so much. But she gets help in her fight from a very unlikely source. I'm not going to say any more than that. I think you should go into this book with as little information as possible and let it take you where it wants to, but it was absolutely fantastic. Once again, very fun, campy, a lot of gore and a lot of descriptiveness, and you get attached to the characters and you really feel for them. And I really love horror that has to bring in like real life horror elements to it. So we have the real life horror of these people taking this land and pushing these people out of their homes, but then we also get this crazy, weird, strange, unhinged horror as well. And it just made for an absolutely fantastic read. Okay, now at number 4, we have The Book of the Most Precious Substance by Sarah Gran. This is another absolutely crazy and unhinged horror book, and that seems to be what I love, and I'm not complaining about it. This is about a woman who essentially makes a living dealing in like rare books. So she'll acquire these rare books and then sell them to really rich people and like book collectors, and she gets her money doing that. And she gets asked to go on this hunt for the Book of the Most Precious Substance, and she goes down this crazy journey. The book essentially has to do with sex magic. So she is on this crazy journey to find it, and she finds little pieces of it in different parts, and I don't want to give you any more than that. So this has to do obviously with a lot of like rich and wealthy people and a lot of the secrets that they have and things that they are protecting within their circles. Like I said, there's also sex magic, so it gets crazy, murder and just action and just a lot of things happening in this book. Absolutely 100% completely unhinged. If you love a crazy unhinged female character, which I know a lot of us do, then this book is definitely for you. Okay, on to number 3. I am just as shocked as you guys are gonna be that this is number 3. God, Emperor of Dune by Frank Herbert. I don't know. How is this my 3rd favorite book of the year? I don't know. I love the Dune series, first of all. I'm not gonna read any more after this because after this it goes into like it's still the main books by Frank Herbert, but it's the start of like a essentially second trilogy within the main Dune series. So we have Dune, Dune Messiah, and Children of Dune, which are like a trilogy, and then this one is kind of a bridge between that and then the next trilogy. But Frank Herbert only got to write 2 of the next books, and I don't really want to read the ones that his son has written, so I'm going to call it quits at this one, because I feel like this is still a good place to stop, because after this it goes into a totally different world with different characters. So this is years and years after the first book takes place. This is Paul's son, Leto. So Leto has figured out a way to kind of merge himself with one of the sandworms on Arrakis, and now he is basically immortal. So he's been ruling over the planet of Arrakis for 3,500 years, and a lot of people are tired of that and they want to fight and get a new ruler in, because I can't even imagine like how that would be to be ruled by the same person for that long. So we're following this group of rebels that are trying to overtake him, but we're also following Leto himself. This book definitely goes a lot more like philosophical. I feel like all the Dune books are really philosophical, but this one especially. A lot of things that Leto has learned from being a worm man for that long. But there are a lot of things that I highlighted. You can even see I have to go and re-highlight them because they're so faded. But this is a quote that says, "There's a time, Leto, a time when you're alive, a time when you're supposed to be alive. It can have magic while you're living it. You know you're never going to see a time like that again." And then Leto responds after some more dialogue. He says, "I have taken away the magic." And they're like, yes, like, you've taken away the magic of living a normal life. There were some other things that I highlighted, but this quote in particular, probably one of my favorites, where he says, or somebody else says to him, "The more I find out, the more I realize that I don't know what's going on." And Leto just responds, "How fortunate that you have discovered the way of wisdom," which I just think is so accurate and so funny. Obviously, a lot of philosophical things are going on in here. I did not expect this to be my number 3 favorite book of the year. But then when I was pulling out this list and I went through and looked at a lot of the things that I had highlighted and just really thought about this book, I think it does fit. It does belong here. I won't talk too much about it because I know it is part of a series that I'm sure, I don't know how many of you guys have read, but I did thoroughly enjoy it. Now we are on to book number 2. This is Natural Beauty by Ling Ling Huang, which is a horror book that just came out. It was in the Goodreads Choice Awards, like the first round, and of course I voted for it, and then it didn't make it through, and I'm really sad about that because I want more people to read this book and enjoy this book because it's absolutely crazy. So this is a horror book about this woman who gets this job working at this very like elite sort of wellness company, like wellness and beauty company. So at first she's kind of just there as like a salesperson to work in this store, and then her role within the company kind of changes and she gets asked to do a lot of different things to work, but she needs the money, so she goes ahead and does it, and then the story kind of unravels and she really understands the truth behind this company and what the products are made from and what the products are for. It is crazy and unhinged and I absolutely loved it. I really enjoy horror that has to do with the beauty wellness industry, and I think a lot of the descriptions in this book were absolutely fantastic. I absolutely fell in love with the writing in this book. This is a debut by Ling Ling Huang, I believe, and I'm absolutely fascinated. I'm very, very excited to see if and what she puts out in the future, but for now, please read this book. Can't recommend it any more than that. Okay, let's get a little drum roll here. Drum roll with me for my number 1 book of 2023. This is Ripe by Sarah Rose Eder. It actually hurts me that I don't have a physical copy of this book yet. I read it as an ARC from NetGalley and highlighted so many things on my phone while I was reading it. So I'm really, really excited. The first thing that I'm going to do once I get around to buying a physical copy is I'm going to highlight absolutely everything in it. So this book is basically about this woman who is working a corporate job and she has this thing where she has a black hole that just follows her around. It's followed her around for her entire life and it's just completely, totally normal to her. This is a literary fiction book, but I guess you could argue that it's got some like darker elements to it. What I really enjoyed about this book the most is how absolutely painfully relatable everything is. Just relatable to being a human, and anybody who has ever struggled with their mental health or with depression, I think could definitely relate to this. Obviously, the black hole is a metaphor for a depression that is following this woman and sucking up different things in her life. But the writing in this book is absolutely beautiful. Like I said, there were so many things that I was highlighting, and I can't wait to read and highlight in the physical book. I don't know if you guys are like me, but I feel like sometimes I'll read a book and think it's absolutely fantastic, and then months later I'll be like, is that book actually that good? And I kind of felt the same way with this one, but then I went back and I read like all my annotations and I was like, oh yeah, that's right. This book is great. This is a number 1 book. So aside from having an absolutely gorgeous cover, it's got absolutely gorgeous contents and writing inside of it. I am so, so happy that I picked this book up and read it this year, and I hope you guys read it as well because it was great. Definitely an all-time favorite. Obviously, my top book of the year. It's kind of funny because I feel like I don't have a lot to say about this book despite it being my best book of the year. It was just, like I said, painfully relatable, absolutely beautiful writing, and leaves you thinking about a lot of different things, and I feel like anybody that reads this could probably relate to it. So those were my top 10 books of the year. Thank you guys so much for watching. Share with me down below some of your favorite books of the year, and hopefully I will see you guys next time.